Horror is off to a good start for the year 2025. This is Spencer Reviews It, and I just got out of the theaters from seeing the movie The Damned. If you want to see this movie, you might want to keep scrolling or bookmark it and come back, because what I'm going to do is tell you everything that happens in this movie so you don't have to see it. If you like this kind of content and love when people spoil things for you, hit that follow button so I could be that guy. This movie, from a landscape and cinematography standpoint, was very, very good. Narrative speaking, it kind of lacked there, and that's what made this movie kind of not as good as it could have been. But it was a good movie. I think you should see it in theaters because there are a few jump scares in there that are really, really good. And the movie's just very, very creepy, and I think it's one to be experienced in theaters. Eva is a 19th century widow who is tasked with making an impossible choice when, in the middle of an especially cruel winter, a ship sinks off the coast of her isolated fishing post. Eva and her crew must choose to enter rescue the shipwrecked or survive the winter with their last remaining food. Facing the consequences of their choice and tormented by their guilt, the inhabitants wrestle with a mounting sense of dread and begin to believe they are all being punished for their choices. So basically, in a nutshell, they are going out to find fish because there's a scarcity in the food supply. Before they go do this, they do see out between some mountain points out in the ocean, they see a ship that is slowly sinking, people screaming and yelling, asking for help. And they have to make that choice if they're going to go help or not. And ultimately, they leave it up with Eva because she is overseeing this post. And she decides no, that they are not going to go help them. She does not want to put her men in danger. The next day, Eva goes and walks the beach, and she sees a rope that is connected to a barrel. When she brings the barrel into the men, they open it and see that there is food in there, which make them make the decision to go out and check the shipwreck and maybe see if they can find something else to help them last when it comes to food because of the scarcity of that. As they go out there, this is where the things start to get a little bit more tense, and the horror aspect starts to pick up a little bit. More the thriller, not horror yet. That's more towards the middle to the final act. But as they're going out there, of course, they see men who have survived the shipwreck on the side of a mountain who jump in the water trying to get on their boat. They're trying to get out. They lose their head ship captain. He falls in the water. The next person, who ends up being the ship captain after he falls in the water, ends up having to hit someone in the face with an axe to protect Eva as he's trying to get in the boat. It's a very intense scene, a lot of just suspense and action. Of course, since all these bodies were in the water, they do eventually pull up on shore. And there is a woman named Helga, who is part of the crew, but she's kind of one of those very spiritual, ritualistic type people who thinks everything is of divine nature or spiritual or haunting nature, so to speak. Part of her ritualistic nature is when these bodies are coming up, she says that, hey, we have to give them a proper burial. Well, there are certain things that we have to do. We have to put them in a coffin and spin it 3 times so if they come back to life, they don't know where they're at. We have to put nails in their feet so they can't walk appropriately. We have to tie them up so that they can't become unbound. If we don't do this, they can come back. Well, of course, things start happening, and when they go check on it, because Helga has disappeared, they find out that one of those bodies is gone. Things start happening, things that were described by Helga earlier in the movie about how we're going to be turned against each other, but also Eva starts seeing this zombie-like or ghostly figure that reminds me a lot of the demon from Sinister. She calls this entity a Drogo, which also means phantom or ghost in other languages, but also in German, I believe when I looked it up, it says always active. So this thing is very active at night, not much during the day. But we do know from Helga before she disappears, and we do find out that she does not make it and she does pass. She does say the only way to defeat this thing is with fire. As the movie goes on, the crew slowly starts going crazy. They start believing into this thing. They end up going and checking those bodies when they find out that one is gone, and start doing the ritual for all the rest of the bodies so that this thing doesn't come back or multiply or become more, I'm guessing. One by one, each character starts to unravel. One gets sick, starts attacking the other shipmates. They have to hit him in the head and get rid of him. Another person has to get rid of himself, if you know what I'm saying. There's also another very intense scene where they're walking through fog where they can't see each other, and next thing you know it, she sees one of the people just jump off of a cliff, kind of like Midsommar. So there's a lot of just intense and suspenseful moment. But in the end, does she get rid of this entity? She ends up getting attacked by this entity. She gets rid of him and burns the house down that he's in. But as she's getting out, she hears a man screaming. There are two other surviving fishermen with her who go to help her, and they are asking what's going on. And she's like, I got rid of it. I got rid of it. As the house is burning, she starts to really focus, and you start to see that she's starting to play what happened in her mind. Maybe it wasn't the entity. And the replay of it, they show us it's a real person who was there, who was doing this, saying, I'm sorry I stole your fish. I'm sorry I was doing all this. I'm sorry I tried to steal your boat. And it kind of starts explaining things and makes you think, was it really an entity or not? And then it just ends. So it really just ends with you thinking, was this all in her mind? Were they all just losing their minds? Was it this entity or this spiritual or this haunting demon thing, or was it them just losing their minds? Definitely a movie I think you should see in theaters, because there are some pretty good scares in there, and they're authentic scares. There's not a lot of CGI in this movie, so it's a lot of atmosphere and tone that build that suspense to scare you. So if you saw this movie, I know this is a long review, let me know in the comments what you thought about this movie.